Show. I am Mary Grace, the voice of sanity, to help you navigate politics, culture, wellness, faith, and world events. Today, we are going to be talking about wellness and maybe a little bit of politics and world events mixed in because it's hard to talk about wellness these days without understanding what's going on in the background with all of these policies and things like that. And we have with us our good friend, Dr. Troy Spurrill, Synapse Center for Health and Healing. And he's been with us a number of times, but it's been a minute. So, welcome back to the show, Dr. Troy. It's great to see you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I very much appreciate it. Love it.
Yes, we are excited and we are live streaming here today on a number of platforms. We're on Rumble, X, we are on Facebook, and we are on YouTube. So please, if you are watching, share this, get the word out, tag other people, repost, whatever it is you can do on the platform you're watching on. We will be taking some questions from Dr. Troy if time allows. We have a little bit shorter broadcast planned for today. As always, this is not medical advice. This is for educational purposes only. And even though Troy is a fantastic doctor, it's very likely that he's not your doctor. And so please don't take what he says as personal medical advice. However, you can contact him if you want to work with him and his team. And you can do that at any time. And we'll show you how to do that here in just a minute. So, Dr. Troy, I think one of the big things I think is that I want to get an update on is, as a practitioner, since we've had a few months now of the new administration, especially with RFK Jr. being confirmed as head of HHS, what kind of changes are you seeing in the medical space overall? Just kind of give us a you know, a big 30,000-foot view of what you're seeing.
So it's pretty interesting. We're actually seeing some changes that are just more mental in nature, as far as how certain clinics are operating. For example, our clinic deals more with functional medicine and more frontline with things like spike protein injuries and stuff like that. We're actually primed and pumped, and we're getting a bit of a clear road ahead of us. It's almost like there's been a blizzard and it's dumped tons and tons of snow, and there's a plow that's actually clearing the road. That plow we're going to affectionately call Trump and RFK. And one of the things that happened, since I don't know when I was on last, but I was down at the meeting for the FLCCC conference. They've
Okay.
changed their name to Independent Medical Alliance.
Okay.
And many of the doctors who were part of Trump 1.0 were there. They were speaking and part of the group. And what they realized, because they wanted to implement different things with Trump 1.0, but they couldn't. They were blocked at every aspect.
Mhm.
So they started a political arm to help clear the road. They're actually the reason why RFK got in, because they
Okay.
went before Congress and had just mounds of the data that RFK has been speaking about. They said, here's his evidence. Here's what he's talking about. And so they have continued that process. They've actually created a new medical journal called the IMA. The first issue's gone out, and it's called Honest Medicine. How about that?
Wow. Yeah.
Honest Medicine. And they are not taking any money from pharmaceutical companies. So there's no ties to that. And then they were speaking about starting a new medical school, completely different medical school. And I was one of the few functional medicine practitioners there, but they were all speaking functional medicine languaging, kind of taking the best from both worlds. And
Mhm.
how do we bring that together? So
That's
that was just,
that's really
yeah, that
good.
was so promising.
Yeah.
But I'll say this. They also said this. They said it's not an easy haul. Even though the road is being cleared, we have an 18-month window to make serious change. So an 18-month window to actually get the right people making decisions. So, for example, RFK has already broken the record for the most layoffs at the HHS. You know, with the NIH and the CDC, everything he's doing, he's getting really good people in there. I am fascinated by the fact that President Trump floated Dr. Means as a someone to actually potentially
Mm.
come in. for the Surgeon General position. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of good chess moves happening to get the
Yeah.
right people in the
Yeah.
right places. There's a lot of people who know healthcare, true healthcare, that are starting to equip their clinics and get set up.
Mhm.
We've been training clinics around the country right now. I've been personally
Yes.
very busy starting that process. And so, even if you are a health coach or in the healthcare world, we have smaller training programs to start equipping people so that they can actually
Mhm.
coach people through what healthy living looks like. And we're going to help equip them. Just like David was equipped to take down Goliath,
Mhm.
that's what's happening right now with the
Mhm.
smaller aspects of our healthcare community.
That's exciting, and, I've been watching a little bit of what RFK Jr.'s doing, and he's really calling out some of these people who have been entrenched for years
Yeah.
in the system. He's now calling them out for taking money from big
Yeah.
pharma. Just today, or is today or yesterday, he announced that they're pulling funding. What is the group that he's pulling funding from? Let me just check. It's let me find it. Um, it's on my bookmarks. I bookmarked it, but it is a organization called, of course, now I can't find it. It's an acronym for something. I want to say
The
D,
global vaccine group Gavi.
Gavi. Thank you, Gavi. And then also that he's pulling funding from them because they are, uh, even though he said they've done some good work,
Yeah.
but that they're not using best practices, and they're letting their political biases sway their recommendations, political and financial biases sway their recommendations, and
Yeah.
this is finally getting called out.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is starting to happen. I was mentioning this to you earlier, in the pediatricians' offices. I don't know if this is true across the board, but I would like to hear from people who are dealing with pediatricians. Up until now, it has been almost impossible to get a child, from birth to 18 or birth to 5 years old without being pressured, under intense pressure, to put your child through the CDC recommended vaccine
Yeah.
regimen, which includes, I believe it's now up to it's like 72 injections.
Yeah.
Not all 72 different uh, shots, 72 different potions, but a total of that many shots. Sometimes you got have 4 or 5
Sometimes, yeah, there's
shot
usually
boosters.
3 that are combined, yeah, so a lot of them
Right,
are
and
pumping.
then sometimes there's boosters, so 5 shots for one particular cocktail, right? And but nevertheless, I've been dealing with a young mom, helping her with some decision making and navigating the system, and one of the things that I was really encouraged about is when she gave birth, they offered her the Hep B shot, and when she opted out, they didn't pressure her.
Yeah.
And in the pa I mean, I've heard horror stories from friends who have been pressured. One nurse after another comes in and they use the scare tactics, and they really strong arm young mothers and fathers into letting them administer these shots, and that didn't happen. And then recently, the baby just turned 8 weeks old, and, I happened to be with her at an appointment, and the same thing happened. The mom just said, "I wanna hold off. I'm not ready to do any of this, and I don't want her to have these shots." And because they give them, I think there's 5 different ones at 8 weeks, um, and which is crazy.
Yeah.
And so instead, the doctor kind of did some of the scare tactics, but it was a very, subdued approach, and, um, to me, it really marks a big difference
Yeah.
in the attitude we're seeing, and I think a lot of it just has to do with money because they're not getting the kickbacks, and so they don't have the incentive to pressure these parents into following this regimen. Um,
Well, part of it is
what are
that,
you
and
seeing
then
about it?
Yeah, part of it is that, also the doctors, are starting to relook at things. So one of the things that happened
Mhm,
with COVID is it woke up a lot of doctors to, okay, we're
mhm,
trusting these people. This is the science they say that they're following, and then when they dove into the science, they're like, okay, this is
mhm.
bad science.
Yeah.
So there's an actual quote. It says, "Don't ascribe to malice what can be ascribed to incompetence and poor
Mhm.
incentives." So malice does exist, evil does exist, but there's a
Yes.
lot of good things that become corrupted because of bad incentives. People are getting paid, and the pharmaceutical industry has a lot of good things as a part of it,
Mhm,
but they've also become so good at business without the moral high taking the moral high ground. They're basically incentivizing a lot of different parts of our healthcare system. And when our country, the United States of America, consumes 60 to 70% of the world's medications, and
mhm.
we don't even crack the top 50 in health
Yeah.
categories, there's a problem. That's being looked into. So for the first time,
Mhm,
they're going in and saying, okay, this is good, but this is not good. This is actually bad science. This is being funded by a certain group. And that's what RFK is actually identifying. There are groups that are getting their funding or who are consistently pushing out bad science, and
mhm,
that's being identified. It's a cleanup. It's very, very good, because it's
mhm.
going to get us the actual data. And at this conference I was down in Atlanta with,
Yeah.
the doctors, that's all they want. They just want good, clean data, and they just want to help their patients.
Mhm. Right, and I think this is really key because RFK Jr. is calling out the lack of double-blind
Yeah,
placebo studies on the efficacy and the safety of the shots, and, like, in this case, the doctor that we were talking to, she immediately went into the language of saying, that, talking about vaccine hesitant
yeah,
parents, and then saying that why she thinks that's a problem and that could potentially be a problem. And of course, we could have gone into all of the arguments about saying,
yeah,
well, if it works on all the other kids, then why does it matter? Or if you're worried about this child getting sick, then how is it that she would get sick when she starts school? If all the other kids are protected, like who is she getting it from, right? But that kind of logic hasn't really come into play. And then she also handed us a pamphlet and proudly announced that it was commissioned by Bill Gates. And so I think she's still a true believer.
Dr.
Uh,
Gates, love
but
them.
I know Dr. Man boobs, but
Yeah,
she didn't pressure, and she
yeah,
even said at one point, well, it is your child, and I was like,
yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
you know? So that was to me, that was just a small ray of light, because I really was thinking that this would be like a more of a fight,
yeah,
and even to the point where I was telling this young mom, like, "Be careful how you say it because you don't want to be, flagged as,
yeah,
like, an anti-vaxxer. You don't want them you don't
yeah,
want CPS, being alerted or things like that because that does happen." And so I'm encouraged, and
yeah.
but like you said, it is a fight. And, on that note, I mean, it seems like not a day goes by that I don't encounter people, adults my age and older, who are still very heavily entrenched in the standard system.
Yeah,
I mean, a lady that I know was having some skin issues and went to the dermatologist, did the whole sort of traditional route. I don't think they ever talked about diet, nothing like
no,
that. It was all attributed to whatever laundry soap or lotion you're using, and we're gonna put you on steroids until you get through this outbreak.
yeah,
And you're gonna, change your laundry soap and all that. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think chemical-free,
yeah.
cleaners and soaps is a good route to go. We did that. But, like, I there the subject of diet or lifestyle really didn't come in to the conversation. So
Well, that's
how
one interesting thing, like what you asked before, what
Yeah,
have you noticed? That's one of the things I noticed at this medical conference.
okay.
They started actually talking about how do we boost the immune system instead of giving you
Mhm.
drugs to manipulate the
Okay,
immune system?
that's good.
That was new. I have not seen that from a medical group in
Okay.
this medical group. In functional medicine, yes, but these are traditional medical doctors. And so they were starting to bring in aspects of functional medicine and even make comments. And I will also say this: it's the first time at one of these conferences I heard many doctors actually say, "We need to pray, and we need God involved in
Oh,
this."
wow.
I'd never heard that in these medical conferences either.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
That's so good. That's so good. I put your link up here on the screen, Dr. Troy, because I know, like you said, more and more people are becoming aware and they're wanting to understand, and take a more active role in their health and have real conversations with
yeah.
practitioners rather than just being pushed into a prescription band-aid model. And so anybody can contact this. You can use the QR code here, official synapse.com, or you can call the number, and you can set up a consultation. Then they don't charge for the initial consultation. That number is 651-209-9906. In case you need more time to write that down, it's 651-209-9906. Just call them and tell them that Mary Grace sent you and that you want to have a discovery call. And so Dr. Troy has a great team there. It doesn't matter what state you're in. He works also in multiple countries.
Yeah.
So you can really just start exploring this if you're one of those people that's been thinking there's got to be more. And if you've been watching my show for any length of time, you're probably already asking those questions. And maybe you haven't done anything about it. But as we always say, you gotta put your oxygen mask on first, especially if you're like me, you're caregiver to other people, you're investing in other people's lives. Most people are like that, but you gotta focus on your own wellness too, and that's something that I wanna encourage everybody to do. So let's talk a little bit about um, I think let's talk about adults a little bit. We talked about the vaccines, talked about children, but what are you seeing right now the most with adults that are coming to your practice? What are the common themes that are happening across the country? If you can kind of pinpoint maybe the top three that just seem to
Well,
be happening over and over.
there's some really unique stuff happening. So I'm going to actually start with one that we've been seeing a lot
Mhm.
of lately, and it's a childhood illness that we're starting to see creep into adults, and it's called PANS or PANDAS. It's when we start creating antibodies against strep, and we start to actually have a neuroinflammatory condition happen in the brain, and it can lead to encephalitis. It can lead to chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. So we're seeing a lot of fatigue and muscle aches and pains, but it's coming from a dampened immune system because of stress, because of the spike protein. They both cause that, but we're seeing. We used to get one or two a year of these cases, and we've had one or two a week for the last 6 months. So it's been a large influx
Mhm.
on neuroinflammatory conditions that we're just seeing a lot more of. There's usually a sleep disorder involved, and there's a couple reasons for that we've identified early on. One of them is one of the things that's very bizarre about the spike protein is it down regulates your electric circuitry. So we're kind of like a battery where we have a charge with our
Mhm.
sodium, potassium pumps, and our chloride. It creates an a static charge on our cell membrane, and that
Mhm.
voltage is actually decreasing a little bit to the point where
Wow.
traditional oncologists who use chemo and radiation have had to start giving their clients, their patients, salt. They're loading them with salt to try and get that electrostatic charge back up. So for whatever reason, people's batteries are lower now than we've ever seen it. Now, part of that might be some of the towers that are up around here. Some of it might be the
Mhm.
spike protein. Some of it might be the stress depleting it all. But either way, we're measuring that, and we're seeing a lot of challenges with something called antidiuretic hormone that measures your electrolytes. So a lot of electrolyte problems, a lot of neuroinflammatory conditions, and the challenge is this can lead to neuropsych issues. So even things like bipolar or schizophrenia, this can turn into that. But it is a one of the telltale signs is that you can go from being completely calm and normal, and then all of a sudden you have like mania, where you can't you can't let go of something, or you just
Mhm.
lose control of your emotional response. So those are very challenging patients. They're very hard on the family,
Mhm.
usually, and so by the time we
Wow.
see them, they may even be going through a divorce or something like that, or something close. But it's even hard for the doctors because these people generally can't relay what's going on internally, because of the effect of the mania.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of that.
That's interesting. So you mentioned something about strep with like
Yeah.
what's the component of that? What
So it's the same as strep throat, but what
Mhm.
happens is the strep actually takes hold somewhere else, like it'll be in your GI tract. So you actually are your immune system is creating antibodies to fight the strep, but it ends up also having a reaction within
Mhm.
the brain. So if you look up adult PANS, PANS,
Yeah.
you get a bit of an idea of the symptoms and what all is entailed. Now, the traditional medical world doesn't even believe this exists. Dr. Pierre Corey did a phenomenal paper
Mhm.
on this maybe a year ago because he was starting to see it as well. And it comes and stems from excessive antibiotic use in some people. It stems from the actual spike protein injury in other people, regardless of if it was from the shot or actually bad COVID
Mhm.
experience,
Mhm.
chronic stress. So there's a lot of different factors. But again, like I said, I would go years in between seeing cases, and now we saw so many, I had to refer some out to another doctor who treats it just to get these patients addressed properly.
Wow, wow, and you think a lot of it is because of the spike proteins, either because of COVID or because of what's coming from the treatments or the vaccine,
Yeah,
the
it's a
shots.
dampened immune system. So the immune system,
Mhm,
the circulating immune system, the memory T cells, and then the immune system lining the digestive system. So people who have heightened stress don't sleep properly, they start to
mhm,
get lowered digestive function, but that includes your immune system, which lines your
mhm,
GI tract. So we're seeing most of the strep is actually not in their lungs or their throat or their airway; it's actually in their GI tract,
mhm,
and it's taken hold, and it's causing a lot of problems. We usually see this with kids. So, and that's PANDAS syndrome or PANS, and they've changed the name to an encephalitis, a brain inflammation scenario. It is treated with antibiotics as the first line of therapy, and
mhm.
then antioxidants, and you have to reestablish a lot of the brain gut connection. So there's a lot there. A lot of kids that are losing their personality, ADHD or focus
Mhm.
issues. They have mild forms of it.
That is interesting, and I mean, that's a whole crazy topic that we could go into, like,
I know.
what's happening to our kids, right? Um, even just with all the toxins that are out there that we're identifying, it's almost impossible to find actual food,
Yeah,
that hasn't been adulterated in some way or highly processed, that kind of thing, and I think it's interesting because, it's like you the food that we used to have before everything got highly industrialized, that was just regular food, and
yeah,
now you actually have to pay extra for food that is considered poisoned. So
yeah,
the non-poisoned food, is, like, at a premium,
yeah. The
which
rarity.
I hope we can get away from. I mean, taking food dyes out is a very small step, I think,
Yeah, it
in the
is.
right direction, but I think we've got a long way to go because the fact is if you're eating Fruit Loops to begin with,
Mhm.
that's a pretty big problem.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, this
you
is
know
everything RFK is doing is step one, and this is one of the things
Yeah.
that was kind of relayed to us. We have an 18-month window to make historic change, but people are going to be disappointed because they want you and I would probably come up with a list of 50 things we want changed in our diet, lifestyle, food, all of it. And what they said is they're probably going to go after the top five. And that's all they're going to be able to make change in
Mhm.
because
Okay.
of the pure volume of
Yeah.
money that comes against them. But here's the thing that really needs to be changed: the laws and getting the right people in for whoever's next. So whoever's after
Mhm.
RFK, whoever's after
Mhm.
Trump,
Mhm. Mhm.
those things are very, very important to
Yeah.
continue to hold the food industry at bay, and you have to chip away so that they can still basically stay in business,
Mhm.
but start cleaning things up properly. So we need to
Yeah.
get back to
Yeah.
food. Organic food just needs to be called food, and the other food
Yeah.
needs to be called toxic food.
Right, or food-like substance, because
Yes,
it's
right.
not actually food.
Yeah.
And
Altered food.
for example, a lot of the things that are on the market, some for example, ice cream sandwiches. What we used to call an ice cream sandwich, I don't even think they can call it ice cream anymore
Yeah.
because it has so many toxic chemicals in it that I think they call it something like a novelty dessert or something. And, and they do that with supposed cheese. It doesn't say cheese anywhere on the package, things like that. And so I think that because that has become normalized, one of the things that you've said before is, well, it may be common, but it's not normal.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think needs to become a more widely spoken,
Yeah.
sentiment, is that just because it's common doesn't make it normal. Just
Correct.
because it's common to have, uh, you know, an entire meal that's comprised of uh, highly processed grains and fats and industrial oils and sugars and dyes and emulsifiers and ingredients that you can't pronounce. That's very common for a lot of Americans, and but it's not normal,
No.
and that's the difference, right?
People have heard the saying, "You are what you eat." The real saying should be, "You are what you don't eliminate." And if God made it, it's good. If man changed it, beware. Because
Mhm,
if it doesn't have a use in your body, then your body treats it like a toxin or a virus or an infection, and it'll either
mhm,
try and get rid of it or store it in your fat, store it in your cells. If it's stored in your fat, then you have a hard time losing weight. If it's stored in your cells, then that increases your likelihood of cancers. And
mhm,
that's why they're starting to clean up some of these things like red dyes, because those dyes in particular can be stored inside the cells and
mhm,
really, or
mhm.
stored inside of fat. And in kids,
Yeah.
they're not obese per se, so the only fat source they have is their brain. So
Mm.
that's where it starts to become problematic.
Wow, wow, that's yeah, that's really interesting. And I think, yeah, it's so I mean, it feels like we're just being like, especially our kids, it feels like our kids are being attacked on every front. I mean, all the plastics, just the industrial waste, the so-called formula, all of that stuff that is working against them, and they're so small. I mean, on top of the vaccines, right? Um, and then it's just this perfect storm that's coming against them and then setting them up for big problems down the road.
Yeah,
And that's something that I think we're seeing in this generation of kids that is now preteen and teenager.
yeah,
I mean, they've grown up on a completely different environment than we grew up. Um, and just the level of obesity in children is alarming.
yeah,
Um, and I saw a study recently. I saw somebody reporting on the fact that kids can't run anymore, and that coaches and, instructors are finding this out when they're going to gymnastics and things like
yeah.
that. Kids are being put into sports programs, but they just can't run. I don't even under like, I don't even understand how that's possible, right?
Yeah.
It's just but that means they're sitting all the time, that means they're
Yeah, a lot of it is the computers, the TV or the cell phones are really the issue, the tablets. And again, if you're eating impure food, that clogs our filters. So our
Mhm,
lungs are a part of that. So it's not even obesity. You can have thin people who can't run because their
Mhm.
filters are dirty, because
Mhm.
they've been breathing in problems. So when Trump and RFK were brilliant with how they actually rolled this out. They said this is for the childhood epidemic that we're actually experiencing.
Mhm.
And all Trump said was clean air, clean food, clean water. Simple. Clean
Right.
air, clean food, clean water. That's
Right.
what he said. But what
Right.
does that actually mean? That's
Mm.
complex. But to keep it simple, clean air, clean food, clean
Yeah.
water.
And I would add movement to that because
Yeah.
it's not just that they can't breathe, but that they physically don't even know how to run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you
I
don't
mean,
use it, you lose it.
yeah, and I think one of the things contributing to that too is that kids are sitting even as babies, they're being moved around so much, they're in car seats a lot,
You know?
and they're just sitting,
Yeah.
you know, instead of being put on, having tummy time and things like that as babies. They're not learning how to crawl, they're not learning how to walk properly, and then they can't run. So it's just I don't know. I've been thinking a lot more about babies lately because I've been observing my friend's baby more.
Yes.
But it's definitely got my wheels turning and thinking about how much of an impact you can have though. So
Yeah.
so the good thing is that you can make decisions that will have an impact on
Yeah.
generations and that will, for example, just it's like you said, what can you eliminate?
Yeah.
And that's a personal choice. It's a little bit harder, it's a little bit more challenging because the things that people grab, in lieu of cooking or preparing food are highly, highly processed and
Yeah.
industrialized. So it takes more of a conscious effort and and more awareness and education, right? So, so yeah, we have a few more minutes left. We have to, like I said, we don't have as much time today. You're in the middle of your workday.
Yeah.
We're both are. But what else do you think? We don't have a huge live audience, so I think I'm going to skip the Q&A for now. We'll try to come back to that. But what else? Like if somebody could make like 2 or 3 changes for their own health right
Yeah.
now, what would be the things that you would recommend the most that people can do that's accessible, that that's affordable, um, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to give three because there's three foundational things that if we can just improve on that, then many health conditions get better. Number one is sleep. So people are not sleeping deeply or restoratively. So
Mhm,
making sure your sleep environment is good, you're not reacting to dust or dust mites, that you are not watching your cell phone before going to bed, different things like that. If your sleep is not 100%, if you don't wake up feeling rested, if you don't get enough sleep, or your alarm always has to wake you up, there's a problem there. So especially if you have to take a nap the next day, so sleep and sleep restoration is the biggest one. If you have to take medications, just know this: most likely the medications are not actually getting you into that deep restorative sleep.
mm,
So sleep is by far the number one thing that
mhm,
restores us each and every night.
mhm, okay,
Number two is the diet, and just keeping as clean as possible, avoiding any just sugar. We used to 110 years ago, the average American consumed 5 pounds of sugar a year, and now it's 160 pounds of sugar a year.
mhm,
So the sugar is just inflammatory. Processed food, so just seed oils, cleaning up the diet, just whole food.
mhm,
Number one, clean whole food
yeah,
and smaller portions. That's a big part of it. And
yeah,
then the third thing is movement. Get up and move. If you just did those three things and got good at it, it doesn't matter what age you are, there's going to be
mhm.
some level of health improvement. Always.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good one. I mean, one of the things we do with my dad, he's going to be 88 next month, is we get him, he had a stroke in the fall, but even before that, we always make sure he's up and moving around at
Yeah.
least once an hour.
Yeah.
And even if it's, the weather's really hot, so it's harder for him to
Mhm.
go outside, but up and down the hall, doing little sit to stand in the
Yeah.
chair, lifting some light weights, things like that. We really emphasize that. And that's one of the reasons when he had the stroke, that he was able to do rehab is because he was able to stand up,
Yep.
with, with a little assistance on day 1.
Yeah.
And they told us that so many patients decline rapidly after a stroke because they literally do not have the physical strength, to stand up and support their body weight with their own legs.
Yep.
Even people a lot younger than he is. And so I can tell you, everybody listening, that really is a key, is to keep moving. Um, and regardless of what age you are, set a timer so that you can get, you can get up and move around, even if you have limitations, walk around in your house and
Yeah.
do some of those things. So it really does make a
Well,
difference.
we even had during COVID, we had a person who was struggling. It got into her lungs,
Mhm.
and she was very, very weak. And so I had her do shadow boxing like this, and then arm lifts like that,
Okay.
and it increased the blood flow to the lungs. And we did percussion and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
She credits that with saving her life because that's when her immune system made the change. It was just movement to increase blood flow to the lungs, and
Yeah,
she
that's
couldn't
that.
she couldn't even walk. So she was just doing this for
Okay.
2 minutes,
Okay.
which doesn't sound like a lot, but she was
Yeah.
doing it consistently. It worked. So just
That's
movement.
That is really interesting. Yeah, like when my dad had COVID, I didn't let him lay flat in the bed,
Mm,
and then, I kept him in his recliner, but again, I felt like crap because I was just getting over COVID,
yeah,
but I was getting him up again every hour, like, "You gotta get up, we gotta walk around," just to
yeah,
keep that fluid
yeah.
from settling in his
So crucial.
lungs. Yeah, and so I do believe that that was a big factor in his healing. Um, of course, nobody was doing that to me. I
I
was
know.
I could barely walk. I mean, I was so sick, but it's over. But I'm gonna take I said I wasn't gonna take a question, but I think there's one question that, somebody has that's good because a lot of people are gonna be asking this. How can you help yourself naturally sleep without medications? One thing I do is I take magnesium glycinate, and that's just over the counter. I get it. You can get it from my wellness store if you want. I'll put the link up here, but it's very widely available. What else? What else, Dr. Troy? This is my wellness store, and it's on my website too. You can just go right there, click it, or go to it from my website. Yeah. What else do you think, Dr. Troy?
So, the first part of sleep is very much serotonin based, and the second part is melatonin based. And so, um, there is for serotonin, you want to try and reduce intestinal inflammation.
Mhm.
So by not eating late, that helps you get to sleep naturally. By reducing any type of intestinal inflammation dysfunction is going to help. Now, to make melatonin, the deep sleep hormone, there's only four things that are involved with that. Number one, you need B6. So you have to make sure you have enough B6 in your body. Most of that, again, requires a healthy GI tract.
Mhm.
But this is what depletes your serotonin from becoming melatonin. There's three things: stress, infection, and inflammation. That's it. It actually converts it into an acid called quinolytic acid that causes alertness. It's a neurotoxin.
Mm.
So you have to, I know it sounds easy, manage your stress. That includes mental, chemical, and physical stress. So if you're a worrier, you learn to surrender. If you're on your phone, that's a visual distress, and you're reading news before going to bed, turn it off. You've got to
Mhm.
get into a better mindset and reduce your stress and
Mhm.
truly, truly forgive, surrender, have gratitude, whatever it looks like. Inflammation, that can be anywhere. Diet, it can be problems with your actual airway. You have to make sure your airway in your mouth and your nasal passage can deliver oxygen, and we get weaker here as we age, and our airway actually collapses. So we want to strengthen this.
Mm.
So that's part of the sleeping naturally. Inflammation, infection, just looking for those things
Mhm.
may require some investigation. Parasites, intestinal fungus, and a bacterial infection called Marcons. It's from a staph bacterial infection. You don't have any fever, it's not deadly, but it causes your mucous membranes to swell enough to actually decrease the amount of oxygen getting to your brain at nighttime. I'm going to say one other
Interesting.
weird thing because this is something that a surgeon taught me. It hasn't made the general public yet. This is something that we've observed with the spike protein injuries, but he had put a stent in the veins of people with their left leg, and many people. We're talking thousands of people
Mhm,
he's assessed
mhm,
for injuries, and it opened up blood flow, which improved the right side of the heart, which improved brain flow at nighttime. When we lay down,
mm,
some people don't get enough oxygen because their lymph and their venous return is not working during the day. So again, to our point of movement and exercise, the
mhm,
more you can make sure that is moving and exercising properly, then the more oxygen you get at nighttime. So those are some of the main factors. Start with the foundational stuff. If you get stuck, there's something else that's going on.
mhm.
This surgeon did this procedure. We put a stent in. Three of his patients who had Parkinson's before being spike protein injured, they had Parkinson's. Their Parkinson's went away.
Wow,
So that was one of
wow,
the benefits and the blessings of identifying that problem.
interesting.
And
Yeah,
it's a venous insufficiency. And here's one other thing I learned that was absolutely fascinating. On the outside of these veins, you have these macrophages or these mast cells that
mhm,
release histamine. So many people are getting histamine intolerance these
mhm.
days and are starting to be reactive to the world. And they might feel like they have allergies on the inside or pressure on the inside of their body. Every
That's
time
what
these
I had.
veins collapse and expand, then they actually release this histamine. So these people are laying down at nighttime. If they wake up all stuffed up and problems there, it's because of the lack of movement during the day or the lack of venous return. If it's weak, if those veins are weak, then you have to do a medical stint, like this surgeon
Mhm.
identified. We're actively investigating that process right now, trying to discern if we can do it. We do ultrasound and other
Yeah,
stem cell therapies, exosomes here at our clinic as well. So we're actually doing some studies and investigating
mhm,
that right
mhm.
now. We hope to have a protocol established later this fall
Wow.
that can help identify that and not need surgery to correct it. But that's some of the stuff we do in our spare time.
And that's yet another reason to contact, Synapse because you can tell they're always exploring very deeply into, the cause of all of
Yeah,
these things, not just handing you a pill that's gonna make your situation worse. I have the link to my website up here on the screen, marygracemedia.com. You can go to that link and you can get to Dr. Troy's website. You can get to our wellness store, anything that you're buying supplement wise online, please go look in my wellness store. There's a good chance we have it there, and it's all been curated.
yeah,
And our owners work directly with the manufacturers of these supplements, so you're not going to get these fake knockoffs that you would get, which have been reported on Walmart, Amazon, things like that. So really, please do take that seriously, and if you're buying all of those supplements, even if they have the name brand bottle of brands that you should be able to trust, you just don't know. So that's my wellness store. And then, of course, we're going to go with Dr. Troy over at officialsynapse.com to get you dialed in so that if you have questions like the one that was just asked, if you're wondering how to reclaim your health and you want to take that next step, get that, set up that discovery call. Again, it's a no obligation. They're going to spend time with you just going through a series of questions and addressing some of your concerns to see if it would be a good fit for both of you. And so I do recommend that you do that. You can call them directly. That number over there is 651-209-9906, 651-209-9906, and just set up that call. Make sure you tell them that Mary Grace sent you. And I think that this is great that we have these options, that we have um, that we have a way to help ourselves. And somebody just did put a comment in here about insurance, but I think that it's really important, I think, to understand the idea that people have become so dependent on insurance to dictate their healthcare decisions that it's actually made them sicker. Because if the insurance tells you you can do it, you do it. If they tell you you can't, you don't. And that includes the medications and things like that. Well, if we treated our cars that way, everybody would be driving around in a piece of junk because, if the insurance didn't cover your new tires or your oil change or your wiper blades, or things like that, or your, 10,000-mile service, it doesn't cover that stuff. But
No,
we
not
as
yet, no.
as humans, we expect our health insurance to cover that, and so we're not actually proactive, we're reactive.
Yeah.
And so the mindset really needs to change, and that's what your team is working on to help people become more proactive about their priorities of what they're spending money on and how the money is being used to help them.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things I'll just finish with this. We're trying to make change. So I know one of the plans for this current administration is to actually increase and give HSA funding. So that's health
Yes.
savings accounts. Now, a lot of things have to happen to actually make that happen, including balanced budget and actual net
Mhm,
increase, and debt needs to go down. But HSAs, funding HSAs, so you can choose to put
mhm.
it in to whatever you want to versus what the insurance company says they'll pay for.
Yeah,
That is a major thing that we want to see happen in the next 2 years, and that's one thing
yeah,
I'm fighting for. So
yeah, yeah.
we expect to see changes with that. Until then, I'm encouraging
Mhm.
people to put their money away and save up like you would to remodel your house or to take care of your car. Save it up so you can spend it on yourself until
Yes.
insurance or HSAs are operating differently. But it's gonna we're fighting for it, but it's gonna be a minute.
Okay, that's good, that's good. That's all we have time for today, and, again, we had with us today Dr. Troy Spurrill, official synapse.com, and, if you want to get a free consultation with them to set up, just to see if it's gonna be a good fit for you to work with them, go ahead and contact them. Anything that we talked about today, if you can't find it or you can't remember the link, just go to marygracemedia.com and you can look around the website, you can go on the shopping tab and you can find links to all of our affiliate partners. There's a lot there that I didn't even mention today. So go over there, look for those resources, and start taking charge of your own health. We will have Dr. Troy back here soon, and I want to thank everybody for listening. Please remember to share this, send it in a message, tag other people, repost on whatever platform you're watching on. All of that helps us. And everybody have a great day. Go out and touch some grass, look at the sky, put your phone down, and take some deep breaths and thank God that you're here. It's a great time to be alive. Thank you again for being
Yeah,
here, Dr. Troy. We're
absolutely.
always grateful for all the information that you give us. Have a great day, everybody.